Good afternoon and welcome to the admissions counseling session, Preparing for the LSAT. My name is Maria Lambie and I work in admissions at the Northern Kentucky University Chase College of Law. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss a framework for beginning your LSAT preparation and talk about how to avoid the common pitfalls students make as they prepare. Let's begin with discussing what is the LSAT and why do you have to take it? The LSAT is a standardized test used by law schools when evaluating your candidacy as compared to other candidates. It predicts law school success by assessing if you have the necessary skills. The scores on the LSAT range from a 120 to a 180. So we just discussed the LSAT test skills needed for law school success. It does this by utilizing 3 different question types and a writing sample. There are 3 types of multiple choice questions on the LSAT. The first question type is reading comprehension. The practice of law requires reading challenging text. The LSAT will measure your ability to read quickly and carefully for explicit themes as well as hidden or implied points. The second type of question is analytical reasoning. This type of question requires you to consider a group of facts and rules and determine what could or must be true. Very similarly to how a law student will take a set of facts and assess that against existing law and regulations. The third question type is logical reasoning, which measures your ability to examine and evaluate arguments. In addition to the multiple choice questions, you will complete a persuasive writing essay based on a prompt you will be provided. So after you have decided you are definitely going to sit for the LSAT, where do you go next and what should your next step be? The first step is to set your goal test score, which is in a competitive range for the law schools for which you will apply. To find out what a competitive score is, you can reach out directly to the schools you are interested in applying to, or you can also find this information on every law school's website under their American Bar Association disclosures, or you can also find this information through the LSAT tools that they provide online, including their school comparison tool. So once you know what the numbers are, how do you kind of understand what would be competitive? So for example, if a school had a median score of a 151, a 143 would probably not be competitive. So even though with a median of 151, some people admitted are going to have less than a 151, and some people are going to have more, a 143 is just too low to kind of be in that competitive range around a 151. However, a score of a 165 would be highly competitive as that number is significantly below the median. And then, while we're talking about this, you're going to want to note that a low score can keep you out of law school. Once you've set your goal score, the next thing you want to do is take your diagnostic test, so you have a good picture of where you are today. Once you've done a full-length diagnostic test, then you're going to determine how long you need to prepare and when to test. In general, the average person needs 3 to 4 months of preparation for 20 hours a week. To be more in depth, if you needed to move your score 5 points or fewer, you can probably get that done in about 1 to 2 months. If you needed to move your score 8 to 12 points, then you're about average and you're probably going to need that 3 to 4 months. If you needed to move your score 15 points or more, then you would probably require 4 to 6 months of preparation. And if you needed to raise your score 20 or more points, then you would need at least 6 months of preparation. So once you know how long you are going to need to prepare, then you can schedule yourself to sit for the exam. Right now we're kind of uncertain times, so test dates are fluctuating. Usually the test is offered several times a year. Due to recent cancellations, it's been offered a little more frequently through the LSAT Flex method. So we highly recommend that you keep an eye on the LSAC website so you can keep abreast of the changes and when the test will be administered. In general, if you're completing your undergraduate work, we usually recommend that you take the test the summer after your junior year, because that would give you enough time to retake the test if you needed to and still be relatively early in the law school application cycle. For everyone else, our recommendation would be to take the test as soon as you are in the range of your goal score. So then once you have moved on past this step of knowing how long you need to take and about when you're going to test, you're going to decide what tools you're going to use to prepare for the LSAT. So you have so many options to prepare. Several of them are paid. Some of the paid options that are available to you would be one of the more expensive test prep companies. Some people also employ tutors to help them prepare. And then there are also some online courses that help you prepare for the LSAT. I would like to note that a lot of these test prep companies can be cost prohibitive, such as, Kaplan or Testmasters. What I would like to note is that even though they don't advertise it, many of them offer some sort of need-based discounts. So if doing one of these paid tools would be cost prohibitive, it doesn't hurt to reach out and see if they have any needs-based programming. If one of the paid methods is not available to you, don't worry, there are a lot of free options out there. One of the most popular is the Khan Academy, which is free LSAT prep offered through the LSAC. It has been reviewed pretty highly by many students that we've spoken to. Some of the positive attributes that they've noticed is that they like that it's all online. They can access it from their computer. It works to build your skills. So it starts where you are today and then gradually becomes harder as your skills increase. And then it also has a downloadable app that you can put on your phone or tablet. And that's really great for those of you who are working and in school and have, really limited schedules, because it enables you to squeeze in practice time when it's convenient for you. So if you have a 10 or 15-minute break at work, you can spend that time doing LSAT prep questions. Some other free ways to gain LSAT information and help are through free blogs that are out there. There are several free providers on YouTube. There are several free podcasts, and then there are even people who have Facebook groups. And this is a great way to kind of immerse yourself and kind of hear the experience of other students, especially in times like these where the mechanism of the LSAT has changed. And sometimes there are technical changes for you to kind of get a handle on what's going on. The other great thing about all these providers is if one provider doesn't necessarily work with your learning style, it's free. There's no reason you can't just keep looking around until you find someone whose teaching style works with your learning style. So now that you know how to get started on your LSAT prep, we want to make sure you avoid those common pitfalls that we often see students make. So I already know that I talked really in depth about how long you will need to prepare, but I want to hammer this point home. Most individuals do not allow enough time to prepare. Most people need a solid 3 to 4 months of 20 hours a week. So make sure that you have allotted enough time to practice, practice, practice. We've already talked about how it's a skills test, and we've already talked about how you can't increase your skills without putting the time in. So just make sure you've allotted the appropriate amount of time. This kind of segues into our next point, which is planning to cram. There is no cramming for the LSAT. It is, again, it's a skills test. There's no cliff notes. The only way to improve your analytical skills and your reading skills is to practice using them. Another huge pitfall we see is not reviewing the practice problems. This is the most important part of your LSAT prep. So if you're not going back and reviewing the questions that you missed or the questions that you maybe got right, but you were unsure of why you got them right, you're not going to move the needle on your score. You really need to go back and diagnose where mistakes were made and make sure that you adjust so that you don't continue to make the same mistakes. Not reviewing your practice problems is also a really good way to get to burnout if you're just doing test after test and you're not accomplishing anything. It'll just lead to frustration and burnout. Another thing that we really see a lot of people do is jumping in too fast. I recommend that you don't just jump into taking practice test after practice test. After your diagnostic, it's a good idea to just take some time to familiarize yourself with the problems and how to tackle each question type. And then once you're familiar, you want to move into taking untimed practice tests. So again, spend some time slowly working through the problems, getting used to them. And then once you have your sea legs, then moved into doing timed practice. So I haven't spoken a lot about the LSAT format. And the reason for that is it's kind of been in flux and it's changed over the last few months. And I'm not sure if or when it will change back. However, the question types should remain the same. But we do know that each LSAT section question type is always timed. So that's making sure that you can meet the time constraints is something that you want to hold off on until you've built your skills up. So eventually you are going to want to work on making sure you can meet the time constraints of the test and also work on items like endurance. I have a lot of students that do the short, just sections of practice tests. I feel like it's important to spend time doing full length tests to make sure that you have the endurance to make it through 3 or 5 hours of testing, depending on what format you end up testing in. Another item that students often forget to incorporate is an accountability element. So what's really one of the nice things about one of the pricey paid programs is it's built in. The structure and accountability is built in to going to class and taking the test. However, if you're doing self-study, it's a little harder. So here are some ideas if you're doing self-study or utilizing some of the free options of how you can incorporate accountability into your study. One idea would be to print your study plan and then just check it off as you go through it. There are many providers who sometimes offer free study plans or downloadable study plans at a very reasonable price. Just print it off and check it off as you go. That would be a great option, especially if you're a real visual person, to check off that you did it. And if you get behind, seeing it visually and knowing you have to get back and do that makeup work. Another option would be to put it on your calendar and schedule it just like you would going to work or going to class, to make sure that you're incorporating it into your day. You could also have an accountability person. Maybe that is your parents, or maybe you have a friend that's also taking the LSAT. Just another person that you have to report to that you did what you needed to do to accomplish your LSAT goals. And then one last idea would be to implement a reward system. So maybe if you do all your LSAT prep every week, you can go to your favorite restaurant on the weekend. Or you are not able to binge watch your favorite show on Netflix until you've completed your LSAT prep. Many people, function well if there's a reward once they accomplish a goal. So again, that might be another way to just build accountability into your LSAT prep regime. So the last item that I see people really not undertaking, and I think it's really helpful, is not becoming familiar with the test format. So I've already mentioned that it's kind of in flux. Usually the LSAT is in person and taken digitally on a tablet. So if you're going to be taking the test in person digitally on a tablet, I would recommend, if you don't have one, you borrow one from someone and just get used to reading dense material on that tablet, and just getting used to kind of how things move around and the size, and that it's different from a computer. Right now, the test is being implemented in the LSAT Flex format, and people are taking it on their personal computers, usually at their home. And the LSAT Flex has, different rules, like you're not allowed to maybe look away from your computer, and there are various other rules. I highly recommend you spend the time familiarizing yourself with those rules so that on test day, you're not worried about what you need to do. You don't accidentally violate a rule and then your test score is voided. So just make sure you're really familiar with what the rules are going to be. Another, thing that might be helpful is if you're taking an in-person test and it's on maybe a college campus where you don't go to school and you're not familiar. Prior to test day, you might want to go to that school and park and walk to the test location, so that on test day, you just don't have all that extra worry and you can just concentrate on focusing on the LSAT. And then the last common pitfall I wanted to address today is not retaking the LSAT. So in an ideal world, we would all hit our goal score the first time. And for many of you, that may happen. And for some of you, it may not. My first bit of advice on this point would not to be discouraged. Many people have to retake the test. So if you do, you'd be in good company. If your score is not competitive, rather than just giving up, just continue to prepare and retake it. Again, I've already noted this, but a low LSAT score can keep you out of your goal school. So if you need to, just remember that is an option. Schools will utilize your highest score when evaluating your candidacy. So remember that that's an option. And if it's necessary and your score is outside of a competitive range, that's an option and definitely something you should consider doing. I'd like to thank you again for joining us today. Now that you have a framework for beginning your LSAT preparation, I'd like to invite you to contact us for personalized law school admissions counseling. And don't forget to register for the remaining sessions in this series. Best wishes as you prepare for the LSAT and finalize your law school application.